Roofstock.com is an online platform that allows landlords to list their property with the tenant in place and allows turnkey buyers to purchase the properties from anywhere around the world, sight unseen. So the question is, does this platform work as advertised? Well, I've been working with Roofstock for the last 9 months on the sale of 10 different properties, and I'm about to share my experience working with them so that you can decide whether Roofstock is right for you. I'm Kirby Atwell from Living Off Rentals, where we believe high quality rental properties are the best investment a person can make. While you're here, hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified of future videos like this. We release videos on a weekly basis. So one of the big challenges to selling a single family rental property is all of the stuff that's involved in listing the property, right? You gotta take the photos, you gotta put the sign in the yard, you gotta have all the showings, all the back and forth with the tenant. Then once it's under contract, you've gotta have the inspection and the appraisal, and maybe the city has to come in and do their inspection. So there's all this stuff that's involved. Then there's the fact that even if you are able to work with your tenant and get all this done, most retail buyers aren't going to want to buy a house with a tenant in it. You know, they want to buy a house and they want to move in. So then you have to decide, are you going to vacate the house in hopes that it'll sell right away and risk it sitting on the market for a few months or longer without any income coming in? Or are you going to sell it to a local investor, which is a much smaller buyer pool, and they're probably going to want a discount to, a retail buyer that's going to move in? In theory, it solves a problem and fills a need for both sides of the transaction. But how does it work in reality? I decided to work with Roofstock last summer to sell a chunk of my portfolio located in the south suburbs of Chicago that had really appreciated quite a bit because of the rehab that I've done to each of the properties and just because the market's appreciated so much. My plan is to roll that equity into new deals in Northwest Indiana, closer to where I live. So a quick review of the way the process works. So a landlord approaches Roofstock and they let them know they want to sell one of their single family rental houses on their platform. Roofstock will provide the landlord with a quick analysis of the property. They're going to give them a neighborhood score, and they're also going to give them a price range that they think the property should sell in. They're going to give them a high end and a low end, and typically there's about a $20,000 range between those two prices, and it's mostly just based on cap rate. So if you as the landlord decide to move forward, Roofstock will send you a list of the documents they're going to need to get started. So up front, they're going to need the lease, the tenant ledger, any photos you have of the property. If it's a voucher property, they're going to need a copy of the voucher information, any HOA fees. It's all the basic rental information that you would need to provide to a buyer. So once you've provided this information for each property, then Roofstock does their Roofstock certification process, where they do a full home inspection by a home inspector locally, and they take exterior pictures of the property. If the property passes the home inspection, just meaning that there's no major issues, then you sign the listing agreement and the property information and the pictures go live on the platform, and anyone can submit offers from anywhere around the world on your home. So up until this point, there is no cost to you as the landlord. Roofstock covers the cost of the home inspection and the photos. However, if there are any repairs that are required from the home inspection, then you have to fix those before Roofstock will go live with your property on the platform. So for me, out of the 10 properties, there were 4 that required some sort of repairs. Most of them were a few $1,000s or less. So how did the whole process play out for my situation? So back in July, I reached out to Roofstock and I said I was interested in listing 10 of my single family rental properties on their platform. So we set up an initial intro call with the representative and we talked about the properties, and then I sent over just the basic information. And they sent me back a spreadsheet that provided the price range that they thought that I should list the properties at. And again, this is mostly based on cap rate, and there's about a $20,000 range between the top end of where they think it could sell for and the low end. So I asked them at the time, how long do these properties typically take to sell? And I was told that the vast majority of the properties listed on their site sell within the first 2 weeks, or at least are under contract within the first 2 weeks, as long as you list it somewhere within that price range that they provide. So I went through the Roofstock certification process, which took about 3 weeks to complete. And I signed a new lease with most of my tenants because they said that if you have a long lease in place, it's much more attractive to these turnkey buyers. So I signed a new year-long lease with the vast majority of my tenants. And by the way, they do this certification process so that you don't have to do any showings when the property is listed. So any potential buyer can just log on to the website, they can see all the information that they might need right there, and then they can make offers totally sight unseen. So it eliminates all the back and forth between the tenant once the property is listed. So one of the good things about this process is that the only fee that you pay as the seller is the Roofstock commission when the property is sold. So for me, it's based on how many properties you list on the site. So for me, it was 2.25% at the time for listing 10 properties. And the range of commission at the time was anywhere from 2.5% to 1.5%, depending on how many properties you list, 1 through 100 properties on their site, and they give you sort of that economy of scale discount. So Roofstock listed all of my properties individually, and they also listed the entire portfolio at a portfolio price if somebody wanted to come in and buy all 10 together. They have that option as well. I decided to list all of my properties within the price range that they provided, which I think is pretty similar to what I would sell it for if I was to list it on the MLS. So I thought it was a pretty fair price range, albeit that I did list it at the top end of the price range just to see what the market appetite was for these type of properties. And the fact that they said that most sell within 2 weeks, I figured might as well start at the higher end. So the question is, how have I done so far? Well, since I'm recording this in April and I listed the properties back in August and the majority of them are still on the platform, they did not sell in the anticipated 2 weeks that apparently 80% of the properties sell within. So let me run through the numbers real quick. So since listing those 10 properties, I've had 33 offers on individual properties on one of those 10 properties, and then I had one offer on the entire portfolio, which was quite a bit lower than what I was asking. Of those 33 offers, about 70% of the offers were they were lowball offers at about a 40% discount or more from what I was asking. So I'm guessing it's just people going through the platform and just making half price offers on all the properties, and they're not really serious buyers, or they just want to see who's desperate enough to sell at a massive discount. I've had the properties under contract 10 different times, and 7 of those times the buyer walked away before they closed. So this means that I've sold 3 of the 10 properties that I've listed on the site. The first one was actually at the very top end of the price range that Roofstock provided. The second one was sort of in the middle of the range. And then the third one was actually at a $17,500 discount below the low end of their price range. And it was still a good deal for me because I had built up so much equity in that property. I decided to sell it below what they had recommended, but it was substantially below their range. So of the 7 buyers that walked away before they closed, it ranged from all the way from tire kickers who, they didn't even provide their earnest money deposit. They just walked away within a day or two after they got the property under contract, all the way up to the most recent one, which was pretty painful. And I had it all the way up to right before closing when this whole COVID debacle kicked off, and the buyer got cold feet and decided he wasn't going to move forward with the closing. So I did get to keep his $1,500 earnest money deposit, but it was sort of painful to go through that entire process just to have him walk away at the 11th hour. The current asking price for each of the properties is at the low end of the price range that they provided. I think all of them are still within that price range, but they are at the low end. And again, this still is a pretty good profit for me because it's still in line with what I think it would sell for to a retail buyer if I was to list it on the MLS. And I've had a tenant in there this entire time since I listed the property, so I've been collecting that cash flow while it's been listed. So what are the takeaways for you? Let's start with the positives. Overall, Roofstock has been pretty good to work with. I've had a customer support person assigned to me the entire time, and they're very responsive, and they're pretty easy to work with. The second thing is that I think our interests are aligned really well. Roofstock pays a little bit of money up front for the inspection and the photos, and then they don't get paid on the back end until the property sells. And finally, I did get 3 properties sold, which probably would have been sort of a challenge to list on the open market like I talked about. I would have had to either vacate them or sell them to a local investor. And so this was a decent option, and it really didn't cost me, quote unquote, cost me anything while it's been listed, because I've been collecting that cash flow and they've stayed rented out. So now for the challenges. Number one, it's taken me an enormous amount of my time with scheduling all the inspections and the appraisals and providing updated paperwork all the time to potential buyers. And 7 out of 10 of the buyers ended up walking away. So that was extremely frustrating. Buyers really don't have a ton of skin in the game, so they can walk away relatively easy. So that's one negative, I guess, for listing on this platform. So another thing is that one of the reasons I decided to sell properties in 2019 is because I was transferring the capital gains into an opportunity zone fund that I had set up. So that allows me to transfer the capital gains tax-free, or defer the capital gains to the future in this opportunity zone fund. But in order to maximize all of the advantages of this fund, I needed to have those capital gains in by the end of 2019. So I started back in July to sell these, and obviously most did not sell by the end of 2019. So I would say if you're in a hurry to sell properties, this might not be the best platform for you. So one other recommendation that I would make is to try selling your entire portfolio together if you have multiple properties you're trying to sell. The magnitude of work involved is exponentially higher when you're trying to sell individual properties. If I could do it all over again, I would probably search a lot harder up front for a portfolio buyer that could just buy all of the properties together as opposed to going this route. Finally, one last note is that lower cost properties definitely seem to work much better on this platform. So if you own properties that have a lower purchase price, usually that relates to a higher cap rate. And since they're dictating the pricing based off cap rate, and a lot of the purchasers, the turnkey buyers, are buying them based off the cap rate, typically the lower cost properties, typically 100,000 and below, sell a lot quicker than 100,000 and above. All in all, Roofstock is what they say they are, but it's not quite as simple as the process is portrayed on their website. If you have some flexibility on your pricing and on your timeline, it is a good option to sell occupied properties eventually, hopefully. But I would also recommend pursuing a few other options because the process is not quite as seamless as portrayed. So I hope this was helpful for you, as every landlord has to identify their own exit strategy, and I know there's some landlords that say they will never sell any of their rental properties. If you did find value in this video, please give it a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button. I release videos like this on helpful rental investing related topics on a weekly basis, so I'd love to have you be a part of this community. You can also head on over to Facebook and join the Living Off Rentals Facebook group. It's a highly engaged and highly moderated group, so it's not just a bunch of spammers. There's some great conversation and some great questions being answered in that community, so feel free to join. I'd love to have you be a part of it. Finally, comment below and let me know what you'd like me to do a video on. I love getting input and feedback from viewers, and I will see you in the next video.